Namaskara. Welcome to Clyde Samvada, brought to you by the Hindu Temple of Scotland. We have Dr. Srihari with us again on the show, and very often we hear in Hinduism, more specifically if you have been if you have been following the news channel or the religious news channel of Shankara TV, they typically always have their tagline sloka, which goes along the lines of Shruti, Smriti, Purananam, Alayam, Karunalayam, Namami Bhagavat Padam, Shankaram, Loka Shankaram. So we have the Shruti and Smriti. And what we thought we will try to understand a bit in today's episode is what is Shruti, Smriti, and what is the link and evolution of both of that within Hinduism. So we have Srihari with us trying to enlighten us on these concepts.
Oh, thank you very much, Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. I'm not sure if I'm trying to enlighten, but maybe exchange of views, I think, is what I'm looking for. Thank you very much for having me again, Srivas. It's lovely to see you. I often start off with the Sabhabhyo Namaha, but not so long ago, on the 21st of July, it's Guru Purnima. Mm-hmm. So let us start with a very small verse, paying respects to all the Guru who have made us what we are. You yourself as a Guru. Okay.
Yeah, but that's a different form of Guru. Yeah.
I know, but a teacher is a teacher, yeah. Wherever you are. So, Akhanda Mandalakaram, Vyaptam Yena Characharam, Tatpatam Darshitam Yena, Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Shruti and Smriti, they're two different words, and my understanding and my interpretation of the Shruti and Smriti is essentially down to the seismic change that came in Hinduism.
Okay.
It is a concept, it is an evolution. So Shruti is to hear. The literal translation of the meaning Shruti is to hear. And the literal translation of Smriti is to remember. Okay. So what is the difference between to hear and to remember? And why are we using these two words so commonly when we talk about offering prayers, especially the Shankaracharya way of teachings? Where does the Shruti and Smriti come from? So let's take a very basic example. The teacher is imparting knowledge to the student. So the theme today is we're talking about Guru Purnima because has been Guru Purnima recently. So let's take that as an example. Okay. The teacher is imparting knowledge to the student. How does the student learn? One, by listening to the Guru, hearing what the Guru says. So that is Shruti. So the form of exchange of knowledge that is happening between the Guru and the Shishya is through the mode of listening and hearing. So that is Shruti. So if the knowledge exchange is happening between one student or two or three students, and then the source of knowledge is one particular Guru, then you need to have a very, very, very robust way to facilitate the retention of knowledge and the further spread of knowledge.
Yes.
And also eliminate the Chinese whisper kind of thing that happens when the knowledge gets distorted and other discourses come. So how do you keep the knowledge pure? So Shruti is essentially exchange of knowledge by listening to things.
So more of oral conversations.
Oral traditions. So when we go back to the ages and ages and ages ago, Vedas is what we are about. That's where we all come from.
Yeah.
The knowledge in the Vedas is what we practice.
Yeah.
And how did the knowledge that was given to us in the Vedas get transformed into the Hindu way of living now? And if it is only by oral tradition, by someone saying things and the others learning and then they passing on to the next generation, we have the authenticity is maintained because it is authentic, provided there is no dilution as the knowledge is passing down the generations.
Yeah.
But if you want to eliminate the concept of dilution and you want to keep it absolutely nice and pristine in the way it is, then is oral tradition the
has its own disadvantages.
It has its own disadvantages. Yeah. So that's where the concept of Smriti comes. Smriti is to remember. How do you remember? You remember when you see a painting. You remember when you see a document. You remember when you see a script. So it is the scripture, that is the birth of the scripture, when we started writing things. that is the concept of Smriti when we started
Writing things.
making a way to remember what is being said. So that is the difference between Shruti and Smriti. Now, so we've sort of understood where the need came up.
Yeah, I think for me it almost feels like you're transitioning from a tacit way of knowledge transfer, which is oral tradition, maybe people might even dismiss it as folklore, to a more codified way of knowledge transmission. So it's sort of, even in sort of contemporary organizational setup, you always say that like when an organization just starts up, a lot of this is just about the founders and then it's what's in their mind and what they want to do and all of that. But as the organization evolves and becomes like an MNC or a bigger this thing, that's when you want structure, codification, everything in place. So it's the same logic of transition from, let's say, Shruti to Smriti. Yeah.
The vision of a leader gets transferred down, and the policies and the procedures and the ethos and the mission statement gets drafted, and then that gets shared with the rest of the employees, and the knowledge of the organization is preserved.
Absolutely.
So what a beautiful way to explain it. I wish you could have sat here and explained the same thing.
It's just like when you said it, like, I mean, taking my other hat on, I kind of immediately made that connection. Yeah.
So we very recently celebrated Guru Purnima. And the time when we celebrate Guru Purnima is, we consider that was the birthday of Veda Vyasa. Now, why are we bringing Veda Vyasa into the discussion here? The way I see Veda Vyasa is, yes, he's a very, very big name, very high achiever in those days in Hinduism. One of the things that Veda Vyasa has done is he scripted the knowledge that was always passed down to generations in oral tradition. Yeah. So he changed what was Shruti into a script, and since then we started having Smriti in Hinduism.
Interesting. So Veda Vyasa is like, so basically creation of Vedas in its written form is the transition from Shruti to Smriti. Yes. Okay.
Then to make it easy for us to understand, pre-Vyasa and
post-Vyasa. AD, BC, AD almost.
Let's talk about that in Hinduism. It's a very interesting phrase, I feel, pre-Vyasa and post-Vyasa. I don't know if that's the right way to say it or not, but let's talk about those in terms of time period. So, pre-Vyasa, we had the knowledge, and the knowledge was in the form of Vedas. And what Vyasa did is, he then started classifying things. So he looked at the pattern and said, well, let me classify these. These are all principles, and these are all mantras and teachings, and this is all musical, and these are all to do with
Jyotisham and astrology.
And then he figured out that they all came at various points of time. So then we started classifying into Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharvaveda. And whatever came, that's all belonging to the Shruti period, because the exchange of knowledge was mainly based on oral rendition, memorizing, by-hearting, and that's one of the reasons why we have so many forms of chanting of the Vedas, because it's easier to remember and maintain the authenticity.
Yeah, like the tone in the Vedas essentially kind of gives the melody, and melody helps with remembering, and so that's the connection between them.
So that was all happening in the Shruti period, and then in the Smriti period, we started scripting. So, when Veda Vyasa really started scripting, then he then identified Rig Veda, then he classified Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharvaveda. And then everything that came after that, the Puranas, the Itihasas, Mahabharata, and Ramayana, all these we know in the form of script, because we know who wrote them. It could be someone else who said them, but who wrote them. And the most common name that comes across saying who wrote them was Vyasa. So I think that is the reason why I feel there's a massive sort of seismic change before Vyasa and after Vyasa. So we write something and it's all there in written form, and that's where the Smriti comes. So I think that is the main difference between Shruti, not different. That is the difference between Shruti and the concept of Smriti, and the role that Vyasa played in
the transition between the two.
what was the impact of that?
Okay.
Biggest impact of that is we are able to remember.
Mm.
It's easy for us to remember. How is it easy for us to remember? We read,
Yeah.
and then we by heart.
Yeah.
Or if we forget, then we go
Go
back
back
and
to
read.
books. Yeah.
What's the disadvantage of it?
Mm.
The biggest critics of the Smriti say the biggest advantage is it is open to dilution. Because
Smriti is open
to dilution.
Okay.
You could then, people with less knowledge, not really in a position of authority, are also putting their texts in.
Okay.
And then those texts can then spread. So the spread of knowledge has been easy, and it could be there could be a bit of dilution because of the spread.
Okay.
So that is something that could happen if there was a degree of authenticity lost in whoever is writing things.
Okay.
And then whom do you follow? Which writing do you follow?
Yeah. There's multiple texts interpreting the Bhagavad Gita and all of that. Yes.
So that's the debate for the scholars.
Okay.
But what we're trying to work out today is the impact that Shruti and Smriti made in Hinduism.
Hinduism.
And
Just a note on the documentation part. I feel that in the modern world and the future world, the fact that Smriti happened is going to be extremely important, because if you think about how the next generation is going to engage with all of this, it's going to be through chat GPT type stuff. And so all of them get trained on codified information.
Yes.
So the fact that we have codified information is also kind of helping it over a period of time, but also the fact that now it's like if once they get trained on this, even the barrier of Sanskrit language is no longer going to be there, because this can get translated and codified, digitized, all of that. So I think that's again a sort of post Vyasa effect of it.
Please don't quote me on this, and I can't really delve quite deep into this, but one of the biggest impacts that Smriti had is on the evolution of Hinduism, and specifically around the concept of law and order in Hinduism.
Okay.
I wish I had a much deeper knowledge into it, but I know for a fact that the laws of Hinduism, as in the legal structure, if you think of, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but there will be a lawyer who probably will know more about Hinduism and law and Hinduism.
Yeah.
The evolution of that, fundamental basis of that, I'm led to believe is the Smriti tradition. Okay. That is where it came. So I can see the parallels between what's happened there and how it influenced. I mean, if it is influencing the law, it is influencing your way of living.
Yeah.
And if it's influencing your way of living, then what you said next about using artificial intelligence to further make life easy.
Yeah.
But that's again something that's happened with Smriti.
Yeah.
You didn't have to have an extensive knowledge, but you could still practice, and that is because you have something that is scripted. But here's a fun fact for you: the motto of India, the three lions and then the symbol that's written underneath it. Before it's written Satyameva Jayate.
Yeah. That comes from Mundaka Upanishad. Yeah.
It comes from the Shruti tradition.
Okay.
And then from the Shruti tradition, then it got changed into the Smriti. And from that Smriti, we picked up the word Satyameva Jayate from that, and has now become a motto of one entire nation.
Yeah.
So that's it's a fascinating topic. I wish I had more time to research and talk more about it. Maybe I will one day.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll one day research more into it. But if there is one person who brought this seismic change
that's
and made it more accessible for lots of other Hindus to follow and learn and practice the religion. I think that is Veda Vyasa, and that's where the concept of Shruti and Shruti, the pre-Vyasa and post-Vyasa comes.
Super. Thank you so much. Namaskara.